Great, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting of the East Bay Regional Park District Board of Directors. Today is September 7th, and it is 1:36. And Yolanda, can you take a roll call, please?
Yes, I certainly can. Just before I do that, Matthew, I'm getting some feedback. If you could do a check and make sure that everyone that should be on mute is on mute. So thank you, President Rosario. Director Coffey?
Present.
Director Lane?
Here.
Director Waspy?
Here.
Director Eccles?
Present.
Director Wieskamp?
Here.
Director Corbett?
Here.
President Rosario?
Here.
Deputy General Manager Alvarez?
Here.
District Council Victor? I know I saw her. AGM Deborah Ocker? AGM Jim O'Connor?
Here.
Christine Kelchner? Chief Chiobaro? And Eric Fueller. Okay, President Rosario.
Great, thank you. We are still meeting virtually per our Governor Newsom's executive order as the pandemic continues. And Yolanda, you want to let the public know how they can participate in this meeting?
Yes, President Rosario. Members of the public can email me at yburial@ebparks.org. They can call in at 510-544-2016 and leave a message, and we will transcribe that message. Or they can simply pop into the meeting at the start of the meeting on the link that was provided on the posted agenda.
And do we have any public comments?
Yes, President Rosario, we do. We have a couple that have actually indicated they want to speak in advance. And then I'm seeing some other members of the public that I recognize that may also be speaking. So in no particular order, I'm going to start with, let me just say, housekeeping. When I call your name, please unstop your video and unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes to speak. When you are done, please stop your video and mute yourself. The first person I'm going to call is Tom Gandisberry, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Thank you, members of the board and General Manager Landreth. I'm here with the Bicycle Trails Council of the East Bay. And I know you've heard from us in the past, we're interested in preserving the park for all trail users and making sure that mountain biking works with the other park users and we get our fair share. And we still feel very strongly that the park district in general hasn't kept pace with the increase of bicycle use throughout the jurisdiction of the park district. And I want to point out this has put on extraordinary pressure on existing locations that do allow bicycle use. I volunteer at Joaquin Miller Park in Oakland. It's been absolutely overrun, partly because of COVID, of course, and the trails there are just getting loved to death, if you will. And this also leads to more unauthorized, what we'll call bootleg trails, maybe illegal trails that get built in the parks that you're responsible for. At a past board meeting that I attended, I heard different things from different board members. One said that he was encouraged by the work that potential at Briones Park, where maybe we could allow some more bicycle use on narrow trails. Another member said we needed to get going on this. And then a third person said, a board member said, we need to study this from a very high level. And I do think it's both of those. I think your staff, you have some very smart and very knowledgeable trail staff. They know where the potential for narrow trail development is. And I think you should empower them to work with stakeholders to develop more trails. But I also think you do need to take that larger look at your entire holdings. And then in terms of the pressure, it's just amazing how mountain biking has exploded with a younger set. And we have mountain bike, high school and middle school mountain bike teams all throughout the East Bay now. And, you know, hundreds of students on these teams, and they have no place to really to ride. And the potential for you know, interesting and experience on their bicycles very limited in the East Bay parks. And just as an example, El Cerrito mountain bike team, over 200 members, no place to race or ride. It's accessible except the fire roads that you have you know, existing, which aren't good for either hikers or cyclists. And you know, I want to say that we had talked about Briones Park. I really would encourage the district to look at that as an example of a place where maybe this can be enhanced and work out better. We have equestrian facilities all around the Briones Park, and it's very visible, right? You see all those barns. You don't see the bicycle facilities. We don't keep our bicycles locked up outside the park gates, but the numbers are huge, and we've been trying to get a handle on how many people are out there. There are digital counters available, and I really would encourage the district to invest in these and do some studies so that we can get some real data on how many cyclists, equestrians, and hikers are using these parks, just as examples, so that we aren't waving our hands around. And also not to limit yourselves to the newly acquired property, because we realize it's easier to do planning on a piece of property that's never been open to the public, but we have such a potential for amazing experiences on the parks that you do have. And some of these bootleg trails are actually beautifully designed and constructed.
Mr. Gansberry, your time is
Thank
up,
you.
sir. All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Our next speaker is, I don't see him yet, but I'm going to call his name Ken Nishimura. There are some people on iPhones. Okay, the next speaker will be Kate Bernier. Ms. Bernier? I know you're here. There we go. Ms. Bernier, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, I am one very grateful official member of the East Bay Regional Parks. I wish to address to you the subject of the toxic blue-green algae problem in Lake Anza that likely originates from the Tilden Golf Course leased by the parks, I believe, above the lake. To help you better understand the problem, I offer you a quote from the Lake Champlain Land Trust. The best solution to reduce the incidence of blue-green algae bloom is to reduce the amount of phosphorus and nitrogen that runs into the lake and rivers. Implicated are synthetic fertilizers and herbicide pesticides from these sources. Toxic bloom from agricultural runoff globally is a continuing threat to the very survival of the US Great Lakes and probably Lake Anza. There exists similar chemical runoff from the Tilden Golf Greens into Lake Anza. In an effort to save its living waters and all the creatures inhabiting or drinking from the lake, one might first explore mechanical options to scoop up existing toxins on Lake Anza's shoreline without adding more chemical pollutants to the waters. The EPA offers chemical-free landscaping strategies to help with toxin accumulation on lake shorelines that might complement Tilden's commendable aeration strategy already ongoing in our beautiful lake. Look them up. Please also explore all eco-friendly options available to you, not relying on the advice of self-proclaimed experts with great lobbying potential. Bear in mind also that warmer temperatures only exacerbate the problem. They do not cause it. Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Bernier. Thank you. Our next speaker, I do not see him. There are a few people in here that I don't recognize, so I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. And if you're planning to speak publicly during this time. And then I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce the general managers, Landreth, who was able to finally get in, and Assistant General Manager Cook. So let me see if there's anybody that has their hand raised. And I do not see anyone. So that looks like that is the end of public comment. We did receive emails from a Mr. Paul Van Dano regarding the toxic runoff at Tilden Golf Course. That was his title. And we received several emails from people regarding our roaming policy. Dr. Karen Bushinger, Karen Bayer, Jessica Gumboldt, Diane Castell, Madeline Merrow, and Ag Monfetta, and Priscilla Brown. I also see your hand, Ms. Cross, so that lets me know that you want to speak.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Pauline Van Dano Cross. I'm a Berkeley resident and I'm the director of Community Health Education Institute. Excuse me because I was swimming and didn't have a chance to fix my hair. First of all, I want to congratulate the board for the wonderful work at maintaining our East Bay Regional Parks and the gem of Tilden Park. It offers so much respite to our community right now in the time of great stress. And I see so many people using it and so many people tell me how happy they are to be there. I go to Lake Anza almost every day, and I've been really concerned because, I've been going there about 25 years, and over the past 3 weeks, I've noticed a disappearance of the waterfowl. At some point, there was actually for quite a while, I saw no waterfowl. Then I've seen a couple of ducks, but I used to see egrets every day. I used to see a cormorant every day, sometimes turtles, on occasion a sea otter. And these animals are such a gem to have in our community. They have so much restorative power. I don't know how to speak to that for each of us as human beings, when we deal with the stress of the city. So I'm concerned about the runoff from the golf course. I wanted to ask you to please address the toxic runoff from the toxic fertilizers that may be increasing the algae, that appear to be increasing the algae bloom in the lake. If you check articles from the Audubon Society, and the National Geographic just did one on the Great Lakes and the toxic algae there. And we have a real responsibility to Mother Earth at this point to try to keep this gem and preserve it and keep our waterfowl alive. I don't know what's happened to them. I hope that all these friends have not been victims of toxic algae because the algae is increasing. I appreciate the efforts that you have done to address the algae, but there are machines as well that can be used on the edge of the lake that are not very costly to get rid of the algae and to have our community to have this wonderful resource again. I think this is a high priority. We don't want any more waterfowl to disappear because we have so few in our communities. And I want to thank you again for watching over our lake and taking care of it.
Thank you, Ms. Cross. President Rosario, we have one more speaker, Matthew James.
Hi, good afternoon, board, General Manager Landreth, and all other Park District staff. I quickly wanted to address you all and thank you all as an employee of the district and a member of AFSCME, the Sergeant at Arms, as a matter of fact, for agreeing to return to the negotiating table and be willing to negotiate a contract that I think will be mutually beneficial and positive for both the district and the union. And I just noticed that nobody else from the union is here today to thank you guys. So I didn't want to let it go unnoticed and unsaid. So thank you again.
Thank you, Matthew. President Rosario,
right,
that is the last part of public comments.
Great. And now I need to back up a little bit because I forgot a couple of things.
Okay.
Like the pledge, like the pledge.
Like the Pledge of Allegiance.
I did that once before. So I'm going to ask Director Coffey if he would be willing to lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, assuming I've unmuted. All right, let's proceed. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sunday. Great, thank you. And I also like to acknowledge that our East Bay Regional Park District campus located at Prata Oaks is located in Huichun, which also includes parts of San Leandro, Berkeley, Oakland, and Richmond. And it's on unceded territories of the Chucheño Ohlone peoples who have continuously lived upon this land since time immemorial. We recognize the historic discrimination and violence inflicted upon Indigenous peoples in California and the Americas, and including their forced removal from ancestral lands and the deliberate and systemic destruction of their communities and culture. We'd like to honor Indigenous peoples, past and present and future, and we wish to pay respect to local elders. Thank you. And then we need approval of the agenda.
So move. Second.
A motion and a second. Yolanda, roll call vote, please.
Yes, President Rosario. Director Corbett,
Aye.
Director Wasby,
Aye.
Director Coffey,
Aye.
Director Eccles,
Aye.
Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Lane,
Aye.
and President Rosario.
Aye,
Unanimously approved.
thank you very much.
Mhm.
And now we are at our item C, consent calendar.
Yes, President Rosario, we did have several questions. The ones that you asked were all responded to, unless you have
Yes.
anything additional. And then we had Director Corbett has a question regarding item O, authorization to approve grazing tenant Spur X Livestock LLC to use Exhibit E, resource improvement authorization form per the grazing license agreement to replace livestock fencing, Ohlone Wilderness Regional Preserve. And then she had additional questions regarding purchasing of equipment.
Okay, anyone
Matthew.
else?
Matthew is there for all. Your question, Director Corbett? No, those are the only ones that I had. I don't know if anybody else had anything.
I had item C.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Item C, you're gonna pull that. Yeah, thank you.
Want to go first, Director Coffey, since you have C that's above O?
Sounds good.
If you'd like, I would ask if Eric's available to provide the board and management a description of the legislation that Assemblyman Grayson has submitted. And I do this because it is extraordinarily unique and new in my experience to have one of our legislatures choose a region of the two counties to embrace for purposes of environmental planning. And I just haven't, I've seen various economic empowerment zones set up in especially our urban communities within the two counties. This is the first one I've seen dedicated to green energy and green economic development in a specific region. And I just thought a brief mention of it, and it can go back on consent for actual vote.
Sure. Eric Feeler, Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs. Assemblymember Grayson's legislation is seeking to create a green empowerment zone, which is essentially a infrastructure financing district for the northern waterfront, so the property in Contra Costa County north of Highway 4. The idea being in anticipation of potential federal money for green energy, possibly retrofitting some of the refineries to produce a cleaner fuel or other products that would be considered green energy products. So he's really trying to bring together the northern part of the county in a way that has some infrastructure for funds if they become available for this type of work.
And I just add on to that, that it seems to me in context, it's arising, Eric, out of the long, it's been around, what, a decade or maybe less of the economic planning process sponsored by Contra Costa County, generally known as the Contra Costa County Northern Waterfront Initiative, by which the communities of the Northern Waterfront have banded together for joint planning focused on transitioning from a largely industrial economic base over the prior decades to a more mixed residential and commercial use. In other words, post-industrial planning. And that's been going on in Northern Contra Costa for some time. And this seemed to grow out of it. And just so you know, of my particular interest, the communities that have historically been defined for this joint planning along the northern waterfront are Hercules, Rodeo, Crockett, Martinez, Pittsburgh, and Antioch, Oakley, and Brentwood. In other words, it is Ward 7. And I'm therefore taking a particular interest in the historic planning that has gone on among these communities. And this seems to be a very recent iteration of that. Thanks, Eric. It's a unique unique piece of legislation and concept to me, and I wanted to share it.
Yeah, I'd like to ask an additional question, and I agree. It's really quite unusual. Does it say anything about trails as a type of infrastructure? Because this is an area where we're always interested in having trails, and part of it at least is the Great Delta Trail. You know that, Eric?
Yeah, it does not specify trails. It actually doesn't really specify any particular type of infrastructure, but it does specify that the goal is to target public investments in a way that benefit both the economy and the community. So we can certainly suggest the trail idea to the assembly member and his staff so that he has it top of mind as they move forward.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful because people come up with it sometimes a little too late to actually encourage, post-development planning to see that as a priority. So, thank you.
Unfortunately, it looked like I didn't add components into that square. So.
Director Corbett.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a quick question on item O. Happy to see that we're moving forward to restore some of the livestock fencing that's necessary in that area. Some of it was damaged because of the fire as well. And it's nice to see that we have a potential fencing group that's very familiar with the need for that type of fencing. But just wanted to ask, since we're looking at using public funds, whether we did some research to determine whether prices that we may be getting would be reflective of what would happen if we did go to a bidding process, just to make sure that we're, being responsible in how we're spending taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Director Corbett. Matt Grawl, Chief of Stewardship. And yes, we did take that into account and we looked at those factors when we were setting this contract, but our grazing specialist, Allison Rofe, is here in attendance today. So I think she can best answer it because she did some of that analysis and I'd like her to provide the more detailed answer. Allison?
Thank you.
And Allison, please introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi, Director Corbett and Board of Directors. My name is Allison Rofe. I'm the District Rangeland Specialist. And yeah, to answer your question, yeah, we did research. So right now we have it at $5.50 for the fence replacement per foot. The actual true cost is $10 per foot, and that $4.50 is coming in as cost share that our tenant / fencing contractor has got from a federal grant. And so $10 a foot in difficult terrain is actually on the low scale. The price would be anywhere between $10 to $15 per foot. So I think we got a pretty good deal.
Great. Thank you very much for doing the research and thanks for the answer. And I like the photo of your friend in the background.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The next questions regarding the the green policy, Director Corbett?
Yeah, every time I see potential purchases of equipment and vehicles, I always want to know more about where we are with our equipment purchasing and vehicle purchasing guidelines. And instead of asking a bunch of questions today, I guess the best way to deal with it is just to request that we have a report come back to either the executive committee or the full board on what is our current equipment and vehicle policy, what are our guidelines and rules, and I'd love to have it come back for a report to the board or the committee so we can have a discussion and make sure that we're tracking with all of the discussion that we're having lately with regard to climate change and ensuring we're doing whatever we can to protect our environment with regard to these kinds of pieces of equipment. And obviously we know also as a result of that, there's many, many more types of equipment, good equipment and vehicles that are being developed already now and are going to be hitting the marketplace very soon now, if not this year, next year. And I'd really like us to have a discussion as policymakers on whether we have the kind of policy we should have at the moment with regard to purchasing this type of equipment. So, I could ask questions about these items, but if we can bring this back soon, I would really like to have us discuss that and get an update on what our green vehicle and equipment policies are at the moment.
President Rosario, we'd be happy to schedule that item to the committee to bring you an update. And I know AGM O'Connor is here. I don't know, Jim, if there's anything more specific you want to say on that now, otherwise we'll schedule it for the committee.
Just really quickly, just to remind the board that we did complete a green fleet plan in 2019, and we've been implementing that plan, including all of the items that you see on the agenda today, which is quite a few, and they normally come in slowly, but this is a part of the world we're dealing with today. They came in all together. But all of these pieces of equipment, the powered equipment is diesel. This is the RD, the Renewable Diesel 99, which is part of our green fleet plan. So yeah, I'll pass that on through Yolanda to all of you just as a reminder that we do have a green fleet plan and we are implementing that slowly over time. And Director Corbett, you are correct. We're very excited that there are more options for green pickup trucks, especially electric pickup trucks, and we hope to be implementing a pilot very soon as we can get our hands on some of those to try them out.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll have a report back soon so we can have some policy discussion on these issues.
Yeah, yes, we'll schedule that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, I may tag on to that as well as there have been recent local legislation, specifically Oakland and Berkeley, banning the use of gas-powered, some gas-powered equipment. So I think we should, as much as possible, try to adhere to those as a sister, as we are in their territories as well. So, Jim.
President Rosario, a great point to bring up, and you might recall from the mid-year budget adjustment that we did order quite a bit of equipment for the parks, especially Sibley and Tilden area, to convert over to electric. And I did ask my staff this morning to start compiling an inventory, which I will share with the board members. And we are slowly moving over, especially on our landscape equipment, to battery-powered equipment. So we're moving in that direction. We definitely are.
Great. Thank you.
Nice to hear.
Any other outstanding questions? Director Waspy.
Yeah, just a note, I'd like to refer everybody to items D, E, and F, which are statewide legislation, which are really some great things that I've always wanted to push for and hopefully is going to happen. It looks like it might. But the Beverage Container Recycling and Litter Reduction Act, which would be refilling bottles. Just a great program. Item E, the unnecessary food serviceware, where they're going to require people to ask them if you really need, 4 packets of ketchup and 4 packets of mustard and 4 plastic spoons and stuff you can throw away if you don't use. And also the item F, the the resolution that would involve having more recycling centers. We used to have lots of recycling centers where people would redeem their CRVs and make a little money off the deal and do a lot of recycling. That's on a statewide level. I have no idea if they're going to pass or where they're going to go. But I think this is a template for the Park District. We struggle a lot in our sustainability and wonder what to do. These are really, really wonderful templates that I think can be applied to us and in our endeavors to do the right thing. So just a word of encouragement to the folks that are on the Sustainability Committee. And also I'd like to thank Assistant General Manager O'Connor and Jason McChrystal. We bought so much equipment. It's all so different from when Dee and I were using hand tools, lively lads in the old days to cut weeds. I truly appreciate the photos because it's very interesting. It looks very exciting with all those track loaders and track mowers. It must be a lot of fun to be a park ranger these days. But thank you very much.
You're here.
It's very sincere, Dennis.
Director Lane.
Yeah, and I just want to say a word about our support for the National Discovery Trails Act. That was item J. One of our former Park Advisory Committee members, John Mercurio, has been very active in this trail, and he wanted to send along his thanks for our endorsement.
Excellent. Any other questions? Seeing none, motion is in order to approve the consent calendar. Director Corbett,
So moved.
is there a second?
Second.
Director Waspy? Madam Clerk, can you do a roll call?
Yes, President Rosario. Director Lane,
Aye.
Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Eccles,
Aye.
Director Waspy,
Aye.
Director Corbett,
Aye.
and President Rosario.
Aye.
Thank you.
Me too.
Oh, and Director Coffee. Sorry about that.
Yeah, aye.
Director Coffee. Sorry about that. We have a unanimous approval of the consent calendar.
Great, thank you, Juan.
You're welcome.
Now we are now item 2, Executive Legislative and Legal Division, and we have a report on the East Bay Regional Park District Board redistricting update.
Great. Thank you, President Rosario. We are going to go ahead with an informational report for you on the redistricting process. And I see Lisa has popped up there. I think you're going to go ahead and kick us off.
Awesome. Thank you, General Manager Landreth. Good afternoon, President Rosario, members of the board. Lisa Baldinger, Legislative and Policy Management Analyst. Here today to introduce the Park District's ward redistricting update on behalf of the redistricting staff team. I'm joined today by Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs, Eric Feeler, and Assistant District Counsel, Jason Rosenberg. Please join us in welcoming Kristen Parks of the National Demographics Corporation, who will be providing a presentation overview of what to expect as we advance the redistricting process. And so with that, I pass it off to Kristen.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen, and I do have a brief PowerPoint for you today that gives you an overview of this process so you know what to expect and how we are going to proceed. All right, so here are your current ward boundaries, and every 10 years, as you're well aware, there is a census, and any political governing body that elects by district does have to revisit these boundaries every 10 years. 2020 was an unusual year, to say the least. And one of the impacts of the pandemic was delays in the Census Bureau releasing data. So I want to give you a little bit of an updated timeline that we're working with. If any of you feel like this process is getting started very late, you'd be right. We should have had data from the Census Bureau by the end of March of 2021. We did not. The Census Bureau did release total population data on August 12th. So the next time that you see me, I will be probably presenting to you a demographic analysis of your current wards, what their population is, what their demographics are. We are also going to be receiving from the state of California. This says end of September on the slide, but we have received word that September 20th, the state of California will be releasing their official redistricting data, which the Park District is not required to use, but NDC is recommending it to our clients as a best practice. What that official redistricting data is simply reallocating state prisoners to their last known address, zeroing out federal prisons. And so this is considered the best practice data to use. We also are closely watching, and as is the district staff, a bill that is working its way through the state legislature that could move your deadline to adopt your new map from May up to April. So either way, we do have plenty of time to move through this process. And the main public opportunity to participate will be one mandatory public hearing that is required by law before a final map is adopted. Obviously, the extent to which your boundary lines may or may not need to move will depend on that, whether or not the population has changed significantly over the past decade, which we don't have for you final numbers quite yet. So as we move through the process of considering draft maps, the most important thing for us to keep in mind are the federal laws that govern redistricting. So first, we must ensure that each ward has relatively equal population. And as you'll see in the staff report, while a total deviation of under 10% is considered acceptable by the federal government, historically, the district is aiming for much lower deviation. So we're going to try to have fairly equal population sized wards. We are going to pay close attention to Voting Rights Act and ensuring that we are complying with that by not diluting the voting power of any protected class voters and preventing racial gerrymandering, which just means that when we are drawing boundaries, we are not drawing any wards where predominantly the only factor we're considering is race. There are a number of other factors to consider when we are drawing those boundaries. And that's where we move into this second column here of the California law. California law gives the board a list of types of factors that can be considered when redrawing or making adjustments to these boundaries: topography, geography, cohesiveness, contiguity, integrity, compactness. A lot of these, sound like jargon, but they have to do with the shapes, the shape of the wards, and finally considering communities of interest. Communities of interest is likely something we are going to focus our conversation on, because this is where the board of directors can bring us and direct us as to what you are hearing from the public, and the public can weigh in as well as to what communities of interest have a stake in the ward boundaries and what their preferences are. So I'll talk more about that in a second. But there's really, apart from federal law, there are very few constraints on what criteria can be considered here. We just have to keep in mind that we do not want to consider any factors that will conflict with the federal law. So under other goals, that's where we're going to look to the board of directors and the public to say, are there any other goals that we, the consultants, should consider when we are looking at adjusting the ward boundaries. So what is a community of interest? It's simply a geographic area where the people that live there, the population, share common interests. And there are many, many, many ways for this to be defined. It's a relatively subjective term. So we can talk about people who have shared demographic characteristics, perhaps speak the same language, have a similar cultural background, perhaps engage in the similar recreation activities. We can talk about areas around parks, areas around visitor centers, trails, different types of housing, residential, density, all sorts of things. So what we're concerned with is, are there communities that want to be included within a single ward, right? Are there communities that do not want to be divided? And this is for the purpose of representation. So all of you represent the people within your ward. And so when we're talking about communities of interest, we're really opening it up to the public and to say, what communities exist within the park district? And are we ensuring that they are being represented as effectively as possible, or they have the opportunity to be represented effectively by being grouped within a single ward and not divided? That's the concept of communities of interest. And the role of the board here, firstly, is to work with your staff to ensure compliance with all of the procedural requirements. As I mentioned, primarily, we need to make sure that we are holding a mandatory public hearing at the correct time, allowing the public to have ample opportunity to review draft maps or the options that we, the consultants, provide to you, and have an opportunity to weigh in and submit their feedback and suggestions. And finally, adopting the new ward map in a timely manner, keeping in mind that we're working with a deadline that could be in flux. So we're probably just going to make sure that we're aiming for the more recent or the nearest deadline, right? The earliest deadline, and that will be our goal to meet. The other thing that, as I mentioned, is we're looking to the board to provide more specific direction about what is important to the board when we are redrawing the lines. Some of our clients will tell us it's that they haven't heard much from the public that to criticize the current boundary lines, and they say we want to really preserve the lines that we've had for the past decade to the extent possible. Or we may want to consider that you've heard from certain communities of interest, and that needs to be at the forefront of our analysis. So this is additional guidance that there's plenty of time for the board to reflect on and bring to staff and consultants. Once NDC receives all of that and presents draft maps at a public hearing, the board may then have revisions that they want. They might say, okay, you presented us a handful of maps. We really like this one map, but we think there's a few changes that need to be made. There is ample opportunity for that to occur. So keeping in mind that this is not just a one-off, this can be to some extent an iterative process. What's next? Well, we need to schedule my next presentation to you, where I will bring you the demographic analysis of the current ward boundaries using the final official census data, so that you know what we're working with and you know how much or in what ways the population of the district has changed over the past decade. So this is something that we are hoping to present to you perhaps in October or November, but before the end of the year. The other thing that we are going to do and hopefully schedule for early next year is that public hearing at which draft maps will be presented. I will present draft maps to you, and that's the opportunity for the public and the board to weigh in. There are some optional things. Obviously, we are asking for additional guidance if the board wishes to direct staff and consultants with specific goals or things to consider as we are looking at the boundary lines. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you. Questions from the board? Director Lane.
Yeah, well, well, two things. One, I think Lisa probably knows about how, what the population is in each of our wards, about what it is now, 370,000, 480,000. I haven't really asked about it recently, and I'm curious about that. Not my ward, but generally what the range is. And then when you talk about community of interest, possibly relating to a geographic area, could a geographic area be viewed as a shoreline? You know?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good question. Any other
And
questions?
then just to respond to the question about the current ward population, we have shared with Kristen and her colleague, Doug Johnson, our previous redistricting information from the last census, and then we do expect official data to be released in October, and staff will plan to prepare a memo for the board at that time.
Director Wieskamp.
You don't have a figure now that's general?
From the 2010 census, the populations were roughly 350 to 375,000 per ward.
Thank you.
Director Wieskamp.
The way I read it from what you told me today, you could consider building of the future. I'm thinking that the state of California has strict rules for cities on what their expectations are as to future building of various types. So I assume those statistics are going to be used.
If necessary, that in terms of the importance of that consideration, I think it is likely to be quite low, and it will depend on the population balance of the current districts right now. That's more of, something you would consider after considering all of the factors that you consider to be more germane to the park district and its constituents.
I think it would be, am I right? And it would be very difficult to not divide one or two of the cities who are part of this area because of their size. Okay.
Yeah, and I think the importance of, are there specific cities that don't want to be divided versus others that may not have that concern? This is exactly the kind of information that would be very helpful to know as we're drafting maps.
It's going to be an interesting process.
It always is.
It always is, yeah.
Director Corbett, and then Director Coffey.
You're looking for input from the board, and you're collecting some background information. I'm just curious, what process are you promoting for board input? What will be the, will we be doing it as groups, committees, individuals? You're going to have to meet some timelines. So are you going to be setting up meetings, or just give me an idea what that's looking like? And I'm hoping when you do start talking with board members that some of this other data is collected as well. So you'll be able to have board input on that data as well. So if you could just sort of give us an idea of what you'll be setting up for input.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's input that you can share with staff, and staff can relay to NDC. But also when I come back and present you the population numbers and the demographics, that's a great opportunity for you to come back and say, for instance, you know, the shoreline is a community of interest that wants to be together in one ward, right? As for the example given. So that sort of information, you know, would be helpful for you to bring back before NDC sits down and draws some maps for you. However, if you want to also give that feedback once you see some maps, sometimes it's hard to think through these things until you see proposals on the table, and then you can get very, very specific.
And I have one more question. Thank you for that. But again, are you going to be setting up meetings? What's the sort of process for input that you'll be looking at?
Yeah, so there are 2 meetings at least that we will be setting up. One is when I come back to bring you an informational presentation. That will be during your regular board meeting. The public hearing will also likely be held during a regular board meeting, and that is another opportunity for feedback. But you're welcome to communicate directly with me via email as well, or if it's easier to go through your staff. I've been working very closely with Lisa, and I trust that Lisa could relay information to me. And I think if we can do that, you know, in the next, between now and say October, November, between now and the end of the year is a really, that's the time frame, I think, for the board to bring forth that direction and guidance, right? So that when we sit down at the beginning of next year, NDC, and start putting lines on paper, we have heard from all of you what the priorities are.
Okay. And will we be looking, obviously we need to look at the population and make sure we have equal numbers of people to represent in each of the districts, but will we also be looking at amount of acreage of parks within districts and how that sort of breaks up between districts?
Absolutely. So I should have mentioned that I'm not going to just be presenting you numbers. I will also present you maps that show your current wards. And for instance, some of these factors, right? You look at park acreage, current wards, the visitor centers, the racial and ethnic demographics, age, you know, percent of families with children at home. So all of that will be overlaid over the current ward boundaries. So basically, I will be providing you with some fodder, right, for you to pick and choose what, as you're coming up with your guidance as to the important goals for redistricting.
Thank you very much. It'll be very helpful to have that background data. Thank you.
Dr. Coffey.
So Kristen, that's all going to be in this first report that we get from you. It seemed like the first information we're going to receive is what you described as a demographic report, and that's going to contain not just population, but all the overlying socioeconomic demographics, so to speak, of each ward.
Yeah.
When are we going to get that?
Whenever we schedule our next meeting, but it will be before the end of the year. Ideally, that's something that would happen October, early November.
Yes, or earlier.
Or earlier.
Hint. The other thought I had, and piggybacking on what Director Corbett was asking, it's a bit unclear to me. You helped clarify it, but it's a bit unclear to me that whose role is what in this process. I've observed in my own life that the demographers come up with numbers. The lawyers look at various factors that make sure plans are consistent with state and federal law. And general planning staff or management staff kind of look at the boundaries for some of the kind of holistic issues that confront a public agency, especially a special district based on it, what it does. My own experience has been with provision of healthcare services as a special district. So there's a bunch of different roles. It's not just a demographer doing numbers and drawing up a map. And so am I correct in assuming there's going to be a large role for our management and then the input from our board that you described to Director Corbett.
Yes, absolutely correct. And Lisa, if you want to speak any more to that, you can.
So who ends up doing the research on those more holistic issues as opposed to just numbers? For instance, I would suspect that NDC, your company, and I think I saw Doug Johnson at the Special Districts Association last week in Monterey. Yeah, so I attended his session, but I'm going to have to admit I bailed early because he was dealing mostly with a whole bunch of special districts that are currently at large converting to by district elections, which have a whole slew of issues.
It's totally different.
Are far more complicated than ours, where we've had existing at by district elections for many decades. And so it's, he will forgive me, but I didn't stay for the whole thing. But in the sense of, these wards, there are some local aspects of them that wouldn't be known to a demographic firm. Ward 6, as Director Ling well knows, is generally viewed as a region as quote unquote the Contra Costa 680 corridor, right? And by reason of that corridor along Long Valley and Highway 680, there is a pretty well set, highly recognized and defined set of common interests among those communities along that corridor. And it's sort of, there's nowhere on a map that refers to that aspect of Ward 6. My own ward is highly defined by Highway 4, and more, it is Highway 4. That corridor is Ward 7 in Contra Costa, and it is more specifically defined by a topic that was discussed earlier in terms of legislation. It's known as Ward 7 is known as the Northern Contra Costa waterfront, and there's been very active joint planning among those communities along the shoreline between Hercules and Brentwood, and including Northern Concord. So anyway, these are things that don't show up on a map. They do show up, in terms of county planning, because the county specifically has resources devoted to the Northern Waterfront Initiative and joint planning of those communities, because they include unincorporated county communities. But you'd have to Google it, and you'd have to really learn it. So is there, at what point do those type of factors that are, I don't know what the word is. It's just, it's not.
I would say they're local. They're
Hmm?
local and unique local characteristics and needs. And that is, I'm so glad you raised this, because you're exactly right. I am not coming in with an intimate knowledge as you are of all of your wards and all of your communities. And that is precisely what I'm hoping to start today, is the conversation of asking you all, who are the experts in your local communities, to, insofar as those things should be part of the redistricting process, would like for you to bring them to the table. And I do think that that is, in many ways, one of the most important roles for the board, is to bring those things to the table. Certainly, if there are engaged members of the public, they will also come and bring those to the table. But primarily, I'm here saying that's what I need from you to do my job well.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Any other questions? I think Beverly, you had your hand up for a second. Yes.
Yes, and I would also like to add that in past redistricting, for us as a park district with over 70 parks, that issue of park distribution inside of a ward is definitely, it's in a lot of ways it's unique to our park district, but it's definitely an issue of concern. And Mr. Coffey brought up Highway 680. Well, right in the middle of, and my ward, which is 6, right in the middle of my ward is an enormous state park, right? Well, that's not a regional park. And so I know for my ward, they've said, well, where are the regional parks that we can put in 6, even though I've got this huge acreage. And sometimes I claim it as a regional park if people say nice things. And if their feral pigs come and destroy a neighborhood, I say they're state pigs. But
Do they have a sign on them, Beverly?
That's just.
Oh, but that does raise, I think that's something that should be part of the conversation, right?
Yeah, for parks. You need to think parks.
Sure, it's a state park. Currently, if it's encompassed within, it's encompassed within Ward 6, should it stay encompassed within Ward 6? Or if there are other more important concerns, right, like regional park distribution or acreage, then it may be less important to focus on the state park if we're saying that the priority is thinking about the regional parks. But, claim it when you want to. And
I do. Yeah.
Any other questions before I take a turn? Thank you. This is great. My question is, there's a mandatory 1 meeting, and it's like, is that meeting per ward, or is it that for the entire district?
The entire process. Now, you're certainly welcome to hold additional meetings, but in order to comply with state law, you are only required to have that 1 public hearing before you adopt maps. Now, putting that in context, right? When we hear about these special districts that are going from at-large to districts, they have far more requirements for public engagement and hearings. But since you've had districts for decades, there are much fewer requirements on you in terms of meetings held. And NDC is happy to work with you on, if you would like to have, for instance, a workshop in each ward or something like that, that's fine. But it's really up to you.
Okay. And then my other question is 1 meeting enough? Is 1 public meeting enough in your experience?
It could be, so I would say that depends on what we see about population balance, right? So legally, the most important thing for us to do is ensure that the wards have relatively equal population. So if I run these numbers for you and say, you know what, you have already between 5 and 10% total deviation, that would indicate to me that there's probably only minor adjustments that need to be made to the maps. In that case, 1 hearing may be enough. If there is a 17% total deviation, and it seems like we may have to move the lines more significantly, you may end up wanting to spend a little bit more time reviewing draft maps. You may want to have the first a meeting where you review draft maps, give feedback, and then NDC brings those back and you have another round of feedback. The other thing to consider is in your park district, are there members of the public or organizations asking you for more hearings or more opportunities to participate, right? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes for special districts, that 1 hearing is enough, unless there are multiple groups that want to participate in the process, and you want to empower them to participate further.
Yeah, it's just that as a special district, we are huge in comparison to some other.
And you have to keep in mind as well, right, that the counties are all redistricting. Most of those cities are redistricting. So there will be a redistricting fatigue, or I don't know, maybe it will make people more interested, but the county deadline is December. So folks are probably going to be a little bit more focused on that, at least through the end of the year.
And this last one is just a comment. It's just that regarding population, I mean, our wards are as big as an assembly district ward as those of us have had to win an election in the last few times. And that's a bit unwieldy for anybody. And I know I've said this on paper, but I think on some level, and probably after the next 10 years, the Park District should probably consider adding an additional 2 directors, I think. But because the election process itself in that big of a ward for a special district, even though it's an important special district, we don't get paid the same as an assembly member. And it's tough. It's tough to run a campaign when it's that big. And
Absolutely.
So in that's kind of an equity question too, as far who can run and who can't. So thank you very much. Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah.
Director Eccles.
Yeah, I also had some questions along the lines of the public input and the process for that. And certainly we could have more than one hearing if as you say, it looks like there'd be some significant changes that need to be made. But then are there also other ways that the public participates, typically like sending in comments, and, will there be a sort of a notification process and a schedule for the public to submit written comments if they want to do that as well?
Absolutely. And that's something we'll work closely with your management team to do, which is, go beyond just providing the public notice of the hearing, but also do a little bit of outreach to encourage members of the community, members of the public to submit, their emails, their public comments, whatever they would like to submit in order to have their voices heard in the process. And certainly, you hear public comment in every meeting, and so that people may start coming and may already have, right? I think you have already had members of the public come and comment on this process, right? So that will be ongoing, and there are, if you wish to create some sort of additional channel specific to redistricting to allow for public comment, maybe like a form on the website that's just about, hey, just submit your comments on redistricting. You could set up a, redistricting 2020 at East Bay Regional Park District email that folks could, send comments to. But that's not necessary. You already have those channels in place. If you want to go above and beyond, NDC can support you on that.
Yeah, well, I noticed on one of your slides as an optional thing, you could set up a website, a page that describes the process. And I think that certainly would be helpful. And then you could have, the information there for people who want to comment, like how they do it. I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea, and I can work with Lisa on that.
Director Wieskamp.
I think we ought to be expeditious in having the meetings. It's an election year, and there might somebody in one of those little spots that could go either way, and we need knowledge as to whether they wish to run. And so I think it behooves us to be as fair to everyone as possible. Nothing is perfect, but I think that is something we ought to keep in mind. And you don't have to spend a lot of money in this district to win necessarily. Maybe you have to have a little luck, or it depends who's running against you. And that's going to be an interesting one this next time around, huh?
Yeah. Any other questions? Director Corbett?
Yeah, just one last question. I'm happy to hear we're going to be doing some of our own outreach to ensure that we get, input from all the wonderful people that use our parks. Do we have a list of groups that we work with now, or will we be building and developing that list of outreach for our, all the various different organizations and groups and local government folks that we should be hearing from? I ask that because, obviously there are groups and organizations who know exactly where we are and we hear from them often. But we want to make sure that we hear from a broadest spectrum as possible of our constituents in this process. So you may not be able to answer this question completely now, but it would be kind of nice to know what sort of lists of groups we have to go by and how we will improve that for our outreach. So, we hear from everybody instead of just some of the groups that we hear. There's nothing wrong with hearing from the groups we hear from all the time, but it's also nice to hear from as many groups as possible.
Yeah, and that's at least perhaps or management can speak to that. But usually what we recommend to our clients is that you use your existing lists of people, your existing newsletters, your existing social media, and your existing outreach tools.
We might need to do a little work on that.
It might be
increase our groups. Thank you.
Looking forward to the numbers when they come out.
We all are.
Yeah.
Oh, me too.
I bet. Thank you very much. Very nice report. Thank you very much.
All.
And then that brings us to our next item, General Manager's comments. I see we have no staff presentation.
That's correct, President Rosario. No staff presentation today. So if you want, I can jump to the next item. Okay.
Please do.
And this is actions taken by other jurisdictions affecting the Park District. And I think we have two updates here. So the first one is on August 24th, the SFPUC authorized their general manager to participate in the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion JPA for the expansion project there. As you all know, the project is led by the Contra Costa Water District to help improve the regional water supply reliability during droughts and other emergencies in the Bay Area, and it will also allow the SFPUC to purchase additional water. This is of interest to us. As you know, we will continue to coordinate with CCWD on the project. The reservoir is located between Brentwood and Livermore, and Park District parklands potentially affected by or bordering the project, including Vasco Hills, Byron Vernal Pools, Vasco Caves, Round Valley, and Morgan Territory Regional Preserve. So we are keeping a close eye on this, and certainly will keep the board updated as the project continues. The second one is on August 21st of this year, the Concord City Council went forward and selected a development team comprised of Discovery Builders, Lewis Companies, and California Capital Investment Group to begin discussions on an ENA to become the master developer team for the portion of the former Concord Naval Weapons Station that is proposed for development. We are going to be in active communication with the City Council on as they develop their term sheet with their master developer to make sure that our interests are taken into account for the 2,500 acres of land adjacent to the future Thurgood Marshall Regional Park. And those are my two updates.
Thank you. Next, item number 5, board committee reports. Any comments, questions or comments on, we can just go in order here. The Finance Committee from 7/30/2021. Seeing none. Natural Cultural Resources Committee from 4/7 or 6/7.
Look all good to me.
And then Operations Committee from 5/25. Any questions or comments there?
Lots of great programs and lots of great people out there working with our public during this tough time, doing really good work.
Yes. And then, well, Operations Committee from 6/29 and 7/27. Anything further there?
Ditto.
Okay.
Thank you. And then item number 6, do we have any announcements from closed session? District Council, Victor.
Hey, sorry, I was having trouble with my camera. District Council, President Rosario, members of the board. We have one report out of closed session. The board, by a vote of 6-0 with Director Corbett absent, voted to authorize initiation of litigation against the city of El Cerrito relating to a landslide at Rifle Range Road at Wildcat Canyon Regional Park. And the case relates to an existing litigation, EBRPD versus City of Richmond, City of El Cerrito, and the Villa Mira Homeowners Association.
Thank you very much. Now we're at item number 7, our favorite. As it signals the end of our day here. And I'm just going to go, it's board comments and reports, and I'll start from my left, going to my right. We'll start with Director Wieskamp, then Director Lane, and then Director Eccles.
Okay. If I don't lose my voice. It's been such a short meeting, I shouldn't. August 2nd was a special board meeting that was closed. There was another board meeting on the 10th. I attended the elected women's group on the 13th. The 20th was the legislative committee. The 24th was one of my favorites, the Dumbarton Bridge on the bay opening, which I think is one of the most fun events I have been to. It was so good to hear people feeling good about a project that they could see and smell, and some had even had their vehicles there the night before saying, great place to sleep. I think it's going to be very successful. I think that amphitheater will be much appreciated by our staff and others. So well done on the part of everybody before, now, and in the future. It's a great project. I had a one-on-one with Sabrina outdoors. We were being very safe, so that was good. And if Eric is still here, I think it would be very appropriate. I know we're hearing about Tesla approval, but there are 2 or 3 other little steps, and I wondered if he could clue us in on that a little bit. I did talk to Celeste, who said, now there's still more to do, but let's remember it was the warrior-like Celeste. Yes, she is next door to that park, but as I told her, you see it every time there's anybody using it. And she's a rancher and respects the property. And so it was very important to her, whether she lived there or not. But I think it would be good if we know what else has to happen, like if Eric could do that, or Sabrina, anybody.
Sure. Eric Feeler, Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs. The protection of Tesla was included in the budget one of the budget trailer bills on resources. It includes some funding for planning for what that land can be used for in the future. And it also provides some funding back into the OHV account for additional recreational opportunities elsewhere in the state, not at Tesla. So it specifically protects the Carnegie Tesla property. I guess the compensation is to find a new place for off-road vehicle recreational purposes.
Great, thank you. It was a good week. Good month.
Director Lane and Director Eccles.
All right, thank you very much. So, we haven't met since August 10th, so it's been a fairly long time. In that period, I had a very productive one-on-one call with our general manager. And likewise, a very interesting staff update on the South Las Trampas Land Use Plan Amendment, which will be coming to us soon. It's been at least 4 years, and we are working our way through that with many important projects that will then be available to people in Las Trampas. So I wanted to thank staff for putting that together for us. Then, of course, I went to a special board meeting in which we discussed our ASME agreement. And I want to say thank you to everybody for the direction we are going on that, and to members for approving it. Then I had a finance committee meeting, and of course enjoyed the Dumbarton Quarry Campground on the Bay event very much. I did notice, and others mentioned, that it's quiet there. And you would think, being by the freeway, it would be noisier, but it's a lovely little spot, and I think it will be very popular indeed. And I certainly appreciated the event, which was one of the best openings that I think that I've gone to. Great food as usual, and a program that wasn't too long, which is nice. And then in addition, I do want to say I received the IPM report, and we will have a Natural and Cultural Resources meeting tomorrow. I thought the report was excellent. You know, what we have done over the years is that report has been transformed so that it's a more easily understood document for people. And this one, with its case studies, I thought was really very, very nicely put together. So thank you so much for that. I thank you for the Discovery Trail endorsement, and want to see if anybody is going to the actual summit get together for Moonlight on the Mountain. And if someone is going, I would like a ride. And then to thank the board for your lovely succulents, which just arrived in the middle of my meeting here. So I appreciate your thoughtfulness. You know, my knee surgery was important for me to be able to walk and hike in the future. And so I'm being very careful with my immobilizer and the start of my physical therapy, and hoping to drive a car sooner than later, although I don't know when that will happen. Then finally, I did want to say some things about the Concord Council selection of a master developer. That Saturday in August of the 21st, it was a very long meeting, and I hadn't initially planned to attend the whole meeting, but they started in the morning and interviewed all 3 prospective master developers with those presentations, questions from the council, public comment, and they made a decision at the conclusion of that very long day. And I thought, for anyone who watched that, it was a very enlightening window into the Concord Council and how they make queries and how they make decisions. It was quite a fascinating meeting. And as Sabrina mentioned, they chose Discovery Builders and their team, which included Lewis Homes and the California Capital Investment Corps. It was, I guess it was a decision long time coming. I had not realized that they had talked to Mr. Tagami of the Capital Investment Corps before, but I think any of us who have had any knowledge about the way he functioned with regard to Oakland Army Base would be disturbed about that in terms of the way he relates to public agencies. So I guess from my perspective, I did speak very briefly to talk about the significance of the developer to the Park District, because there are many ways in which this partnership between the master developer Concord and the Park District are very significant for us for many years to come. And I do want to congratulate Laura Hoffmeister and Carlin Obringer for their support of Brookfield. Brian Holt and I have been involved for probably 20 years in this. And one of the things that we heard loud and clear in all of the committee meetings, the public hearings, the discussions about Concord Weapon Station closure was that they wanted things to be world-class. And we talked about that for our park, that this would be a world-class regional park, and the Thurgood Marshall Regional Park will be that. When I listened to Brookfield, it was clear they had real base closure experience, which had ended up with a cooperative agreements, and they had people there who had successfully worked with public agencies on base closures. And they had the Bishop Ranch developers as a partner, which was a local group with a fine reputation. And I think indeed that Brookfield would have pursued a world-class development in Concord, which the Concord community made clear was their goal. And so that's all I will say, but that August 21st hours-long meeting was indeed a really enlightening one. And we will be working closely with the council to represent the Park District in whatever next steps they have. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Eccles, and then Director Corbett, and then Coffin, and then Osman.
Great, thank you. So on the 18th of August, I met with Jelani Dotson by phone regarding planning for the North Richmond Shoreline Festival, which has been an annual event for many, many years. Also on the 18th, I received a briefing from our staff on the Jewel Lake feasibility study and options for moving forward. Very much appreciate the work that's going into that. On the 20th, attended a Point Melody working group meeting and also the unionist dinner, the Alameda Labor Council dinner at Township Commons Park at Brooklyn Basin in Oakland. And then on the 23rd, had a phone meeting with our general manager regarding several different constituent issues. On the 26th, of course, with all of my other board members and management, attended the special closed session regarding the AFSCME 2428 contract. I want to thank all of the AFSCME members who came to the meeting and spoke, as well as previous meetings. I think it was very helpful to hear your perspective. And of course, want to thank my fellow board members, our management, AFSCME leadership, and members for getting to a fair contract. Very, very pleased about that. And then finally, on the 27th, attended the Finance Committee meeting. That's it.
Excellent. Director Corbett.
Thank you. I will make this quick. I also, of course, attended the special board meeting and appreciate all of the hard work, great work that went on with regard to the negotiations. And I know that will be coming to us at a future board meeting for approval. And it was great to hear from all the individuals who spoke to us, and also to listen in on all the staff who put in so much time and work to put something together. So happy to hear. Everybody seems to be pretty happy with what happened. So thank you to everybody. Also, I attended the Board Finance Committee meeting and the Unionist dinner at Brooklyn Basin. What a really lovely night outdoors. Good chance to see all of our good union allies in one place for the first time in over a year. That was kind of nice. And also, of course, attended the Dumbarton Quarry by the Bay campground opening. It was a lovely event for so many reasons. We got to see some of our former staffers who formerly worked in operations and such, who came out, who've been involved in planning years ago, and obviously all the locals and some of our local elected officials were all happy to see what had been done. And it was nice to see that people had stayed overnight already the night before. But what a great event. But I think the most important part was I want to congratulate Director Lise Camp. She did a fabulous job of speaking on behalf of the Park District, and obviously was showing all of her enthusiasm for the opening of this really, really wonderful campground close to urban areas where so many people, including families, can come together and learn more about the importance of the environment being along the San Francisco Bay. So that was really great. And then the last thing I will mention, not to get too political, but we had a special election in the 18th Assembly District, which is a big part of our district. And I just wanted to congratulate our new Assembly member who got sworn in today, Mia Bonta, and good to know someone who's had a relationship with the Park District in the past and raised her children, bringing them to some of our facilities. So it's good to know we have somebody who knows us well. So congratulations, Assemblymember Bonta. And that's it.
Yes. Okay, Director Waspy, then Director Coffey.
Thank you. On August 10th, the City of Fremont held a community meeting to talk about the future of parks in Fremont. It's a pretty interesting meeting. I was told by someone, not the City of Fremont, to come to the meeting. It was very interesting. It seemed to most of it revolved around parking issues at Mission Peak, and it devolved or evolved into that. I'm not sure if any of our park staff was there, but I think it was really important that we stay vigilant in what our vision is for that park down there, because that was the major focus of attention. On the 13th, I attended and thank you to the Government and Legislative Affairs Department, who seems to have never slept during this COVID thing. They've taken opportunities or taken advantage of opportunities. We met at the Sabercat Trail, which was in southern Fremont, with Senator Wykowski, Mayor May of Fremont, and Wade Crowfoot of the State Resource Agency. It was a great meeting. Our general manager was there and our legislative people were there. Very interesting, productive meeting. And Senator Wykowski was, as always, very confident of this Sabercat Trail, which is partially completed, but he has to go over Highway 680. And if I'm not mistaken, he wants to go over 8 lanes and a railroad line. But he's confident, and the $74 million that he referred to what the bridge was going to cost didn't seem to be, didn't dissuade him, and I admire his fortitude. So it was a great meeting, and it was great to get together with some of the folks from Fremont and talk about some of the things we've had. The Sabercat Trail in Fremont, I was amazed I hadn't been there. It looks like it should be a regional park. It doesn't look like a city park. It's a beautiful place. And then without blinking an eye, we met down on Hayward Shoreline that same day, that afternoon, with Eric Swalwell's chief of staff. We spoke with her about how we're going to deal with sea level rise, climate change, our levees in the South Bay. Obviously, Congressman Swalwell is very well aware of our issues. We've told him about our master plan. We told him about the cost, and that we expressed to his chief of staff that maybe at some point we're going to have to invite the Army Corps of Engineers to help us. And it's going to be a federal cry for help because we need that type of help. But she was very attentive, loved to be out in the parks with us. I'm forgetting the woman's name, but she's been with Eric for a long time. Grew up in, I think, Florida, lived in DC and New York. So rarely comes out here, but was very much amazed at the San Francisco Bay and the great jewel we have in our backyard. On August 20th, I attended a legislative committee, which again, that's where we do all the hard work and listen to our legislative advocates and work on bills that we can, key in on, promote, and then invite legislators, key legislators, and people to come out and look at what we've got and how they can help us. And so it all works out together. And once again, I applaud the Government and Legislative Affairs Department. I went to the Dumbarton Quarry campground opening. I missed the ceremonies. I had another engagement, but boy, it sure was fun to be out there and see people and park staff having lots of fun, interacting with other people. I really, really enjoyed that. And I want to give a shout out to City Council member Rick Jones of Fremont and Suzanne Wolf, the Community Service Director of Fremont. I remember at a Fremont Liaison Committee meeting darn near 6 or 8 months ago, they said, hey, when's the campground going to open? We want to be the first to camp there. And sure enough, they did. They spent the night there, had a great time. They loved it. So there were a couple too many mosquitoes, but I admire their fortitude and sense of adventure for being one of the first to be out there. On August 31st, I had the opportunity to speak to Castro Valley Rotary Club. Our very own Lance Breed got billed 4 Regional Park District people for the whole month of August. And we all spoke about things about the Park District and all of the great things we're doing. I think the Rotary Club really enjoyed that. The Rotary Club's a great, great partner with us and with other organizations in the Castro Valley area. So it was a great time. I truly appreciated the opportunity to speak. On Labor Day yesterday, or is that late? Yeah, yesterday, I went out and visited some parks, and I thought, it's COVID. This is all over. It's not going to be fun anymore. But boy, I went to Don Castro, and the place was packed. Literally packed. And the parking lot was packed. The swim area was packed. And then I went to Coal Canyon. The swim area was packed. Lots of people having lots of fun. And Lake Chabot was always, as always, when I went and visited, always packed. So people were enjoying the parks and getting out there. That was it for me. In closing, I'd like to thank everyone who worked on the AFSCME agreement. I know it was a very hard, difficult task, but we did it, and I'm glad for all the cooperation and hopefully goodwill that we shared throughout this. I guess I'd like to finally also give a shout out to all the firefighters that are still, all the firefighters in the state that are fighting wildfires. But specifically, I think we've probably had some folks out in OAS, in our OAS engine for probably the last couple months. And also, I might add that our park district has pretty much remained unscathed. And I think that's not just luck. I think that's great planning on, our fuels mitigation, pre-disaster mitigation, taking care of our fuel breaks. Public awareness from Public Affairs Department, let everybody know that things can be dangerous. Everybody keeping an eye out and everybody doing a really good job. And I know it's not over yet, so I probably shouldn't have said that, but I'm very happy and proud of all the people that are doing great work. So thank you.
Great. Director Coffey.
Yes, and I also read, Dennis, that Chief Jaburo has sent a number of police officers up there to assist with Contra Costa sheriffs and other police agencies just to provide backup to the local police departments with all the patrol operations they have going. So I was very proud to read that both our firefighters and our police officers were up there.
Right. Thanks,
Thank you,
Colin.
Chief. Thank you, both chiefs. I had a lot of fun with my wife Mila attending on the weekend of the 14th and 15th of August, the Big Break campfires. Big Break annually has summer campfires for families over a course of 3 months. They this year put 2 together on a weekend, and it was just a joy to attend. It's largely designed for families with little children to read books and attend programs on the Delta and the habitat and biodiversity of the Delta. along with cooking s'mores out of the campfire down there at Big Break. So generally designed for little kids, which made it perfect for me and Mila to spend 2 nights out there. On the 19th, I met with Christina Kelchner and her planners for an update on the land use, mostly trail planning for the Byron Vernal Pools and Vasco Hills properties. That involves some intricate planning with the HCP, given that these were lands acquired in partnership with the East Contra Costa Habitat Conservancy. On the 20th, I attended by YouTube the Ledge Committee, which I like to do, and found it a productive meeting to attend. On the 20th with Director Eccles, I attended the Point Mulati Working Group of stakeholders interested in opportunities that may exist out on Point Mulati. Also joined my colleagues that were at the Alameda Labor Council dinner at Brooklyn Basin, and I had never heard Governor Newsom so fired up as he was that evening, and it was really interesting and exciting to listen to the governor live via Zoom. On the 22nd, there was an absolutely wonderful afternoon Sunday picnic sponsored by Congressman McNerney at our Contra Loma Regional Park. And let me kill the phone, excuse me. Congressman McNerney had as a special guest Congressman DeSaulnier, and we had the mayors of Antioch and Oakley there, council members from Brentwood and Pittsburgh, and it was absolutely a wonderful day, extending from the weather we conjured up for their event, as well as just the beauty of the park and the picnic setting that they were in. And I dropped by the park office afterwards to thank all the rangers for providing such a great afternoon picnic area for these political representatives of ours from state and local levels. On the 26th, I also attended the board special session on labor negotiations and appreciate the input of all of those who took a couple of hours from their evening to let us know what their feelings were and what the very strong issues were for them. On the 28th, I also attended the Dumbarton Campgrounds dedication and echo what my colleagues have said about that great event. And Mila and I spent the remainder of the afternoon at Ardenwood, right down the road, and hung out with those wonderful naturalists and ISAs who let us feed goats and pigs with them. And that was, that made for the rest of the day for me. Last week, I attended, as I think I mentioned earlier, the California Special District Association meeting, annual conference in Monterey, which seems largely designed for legal issues pressing special districts, which is why it makes it somewhat really stand out and interesting for me. I attended really good sessions on the general work that the Special District Association has been doing in Sacramento and DC on funding for special districts, and learn some nuances on some of the legislation that's been going through Washington, DC and Sacramento that involves special districts. I attended sessions, as I mentioned, on redistricting, a session on good productive relationships between management and the elected board, which I'm sure our new GM would appreciate. And it was hosted and presented by Brent Ives. So I was able to meet our own consultant on the governance issue in person for the first time. So that was nice. And there was a session with a panel of local park and rec district representatives and watershed district representatives that focused on the unique issues of homelessness that some of our sister districts that are stewards of large landholdings and parklands have confronted. This was chiefly in Southern California. And so it was eye-opening and very instructive. I hope to share some of what I learned from that session with my colleagues in management. Finally, this morning, I attended the pre-meeting that Director Rosario, as president, hosts with himself and the general manager and general counsel. So that's my report. Thank you much.
Thank you. Last but not least, let's see, on 8/12, I attended an event in celebration that was postponed for the Measure Q celebration that passed in, I think it was 2020. And so for the city of Oakland, that was a great event. Good to see people in the who's who in the city of Oakland. And it's a great celebration and a great effort to fund the parks and also give funding for the homeless situation as well in the city of Oakland. So it's really good to see that there's a lot of people thinking about the common good in the city. And then I also attended the Oakland Chamber of Commerce homeless workshop, and there are so many people. I'm just impressed by how many people and organizations are involved in trying to solve this very, very delicate situation. And I hope together that we'll see an end, or not an end, but at least a curbing of the homeless situation in all of our cities. But there's just a tremendous amount of energy and people that are really excited about dealing with this situation. And I guess I'm part of that now. So, and then on 8/20, I attended the subcommittee for the legislative committee, and always nice to hear from our lobbyist in DC and Sacramento. And then on the 20th, I also attended the Alameda County Central Labor Council Unions of the Year dinner. Very wonderful venue. Congratulations to the city of Oakland on that venue. It's incredible. And so it's quite open. And it was good to see all the leaders. And then also on the 25th, I attended our little Alameda County Asian American Pacific Islander electeds group. And we got an update from the Alameda County Health Department. And yeah, those folks are doing a yeoman's work in keeping everyone safe and trying to keep up the information. And then on the 26th, I attended the memorial for Pat Still, long time employee for the Park District. And it was held at Lake Temescal. And it was more like a reunion than anything else. And she was a great person. And it showed by how many retirees and showed up, and current employees as well showed up for that. And then on the 26th, I also attended the special closed session. Really wonderful to see all of our AFSCME members speak in front of the board. And also wanted to let the members know that board members are accessible most of the year round, and including your new general manager. Those doors are open. I would highly recommend that you avail yourselves to talk to us on a regular basis, and not just when we're at the table. So, but I'm very happy that we're able to come to a fair contract, and I really appreciate the professional and just professional and decent dialogue that was had at the table. So, so here we are. And then the 28th, the Dunbarton Quarry Campground ribbon cutting was just a fabulous event. Congratulations to Director Wieskamp. Your patience, your patience is huge. And congratulations to the operations for getting that open and done, and to planning and to Kim and everyone else that had to deal with that beautiful, beautiful park. And then I too want to congratulate Mia Bonta on her election, our new assembly member 8018, and she did get sworn in this morning, and she's hitting the ground running. She's got to look at all that legislation that's before the governor's desk in the next 4 days. And then on the 2nd, I attended the Regional Parks Foundation Diversity Committee meeting, and what a great group. And Keith White from Salesforce chairs that meeting, and he brought some really incredible news that Salesforce was going to give the Park District access to their Tableau analytics software or assistance in some way to help with our data collection of around our programs for who's attending who and where and when. And very exciting news. And also, Salesforce is also going to give us access to their minority vendor contractors so that we can become more part of our community. When we have special events, then we can outreach to our vendors that are people of color and minorities. And I think it's gonna be great. It was just tremendously good news that day. I think we all left very happy, very encouraging in our own efforts for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then on Saturday the 4th, I picked up a litter on Redwood Road between Skyline Boulevard and Piedmont Stables on both sides. And as I was alluding to some of my colleagues, some of you heard me earlier, that it's kind of the good, the bad, the ugly. You know, we love to see our public come to the parks, but the bad and the ugly part is what they leave behind. And so that's what we have to deal with on a regular basis. And if it wasn't for the Park District and Alameda County, I think Redwood Creek would probably be filled in with trash. And then I think that's it for me. Oh, of course, our meeting. We had a meeting this morning with Sabrina, our general manager, for our pre-board meeting, which is always wonderful. Director Wieskamp.
This is more an interesting thing that kind of surprised me. Here in Livermore, we have a very small newspaper, The Independent, and I had a call from a reporter, Larry Altman, in Los Angeles, but he knows this area. And he watched that entire special board meeting with all of our employees, and he was really impressed. And I think it takes a lot to impress a reporter. So for all on the board and staff, I think it's worth sharing that with you.
Yes, I think, yeah, well, it was well done. Well done on both sides, on all sides.
All sides.
So with that, I think would like to, let's see, I just wanted to thank all the public comments, that people that came to speak. And for those mountain biker issue, I think if they haven't already, you should put your inputs to our ongoing trail user working group. I believe that's going to conclude at the end of September, I believe. And then the issues around, well, I guess we'll work around the issues around Lake Anza. Matt Growell and his staff are I'm sure will be able to get in touch with you on that. And then, yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge our staff for the incredible work, you know, from management down to our park rangers and clerical. I just want everyone to leave with the feeling that we are all one team together, working together. We all have different perspectives, but we all have one goal, and that's to be the best that we can be as a park district and to serve our constituents. And with that, Director Wasby.
Yeah, Dee, I was wondering if I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was wondering if you were going to note the passing of Lee Nunley.
Oh, yes. It seems like forever and a year ago, but it just very recent. I'd like to acknowledge the passing of Lee Nunley. Those of you who knew Lee, there were signs in the Tilden Courtyard that all over the place it says Lee knows, ask Lee. Very unfortunate. He passed away as a victim of COVID, and it was just sad to see, and just a reminder that this pandemic continues. And let's all be safe out there and continue to be careful, and because we want to see everybody on the other side. We want to get on the other side of this. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And good afternoon.
Yay.
Bye-bye, everyone.